I've spent my entire career measuring the universe in equations, frequencies, and constants, but 3 weeks ago, I encountered something that refuses to fit into any mathematical framework we've ever built. Before we begin, I need you to do something. Comment your city name below and tell me, have you noticed anything unusual in the night sky recently? Patterns in the stars that seem too deliberate? Lights that pulse with rhythm rather than random flicker? NASA is quietly compiling global reports, and your observation might be more significant than you realize. What I'm about to share may change the way you see humanity's place in the universe. The object designated 3I Atlas entered our solar system. I stands for interstellar. Unlike asteroids born within our celestial neighborhood, this visitor came from beyond, from the vast ocean between stars where nothing should survive, where space itself becomes a frozen desert of darkness stretching across light years. When it was first detected by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System in Hawaii, astronomers cataloged it as they do thousands of objects each year. A rogue comet, a tumbling piece of ancient ice and rock, perhaps ejected from some distant stellar system billions of years ago. They measured its trajectory, calculated its speed, and prepared to watch it pass through our solar system like a tourist driving through a small town on a forgotten highway. But 3I Atlas didn't behave like a tourist. I remember the morning I received the call from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It was early, before sunrise, and the voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Sarah Chen, a radio astronomer I'd collaborated with on projects involving techno-signatures, the fingerprints of advanced civilizations hidden in cosmic noise. Her voice carried something I'd never heard from her before. Not excitement, not confusion, fear. "Michio," she said, "it's transmitting." Those two words changed everything. For months, a small team at NASA had been monitoring 3I Atlas with instruments designed to detect electromagnetic emissions. They weren't expecting anything. Comets don't broadcast. They don't generate radio signals or organize patterns of light. They're geologically dead, frozen relics tumbling through the void. But 3I Atlas was different. As it passed within the orbit of Mars, a deep space monitoring station in Australia picked up a signal. Faint at first, buried beneath layers of cosmic background radiation, but unmistakably artificial. The pattern repeated every 24 hours, not 23.9 hours, which would suggest some natural rotational phenomenon. Exactly 24 hours, synced with terrifying precision to Earth's rotation. I flew to Pasadena within hours. The facility was locked down, no press, no external communications. Inside a windowless room filled with screens displaying spectral analysis and waveform data, I stood beside a dozen of the world's leading astrophysicists, cryptographers, and exobiologists, all staring at the same impossible pattern. The signal wasn't random noise shaped by human bias into meaning, the way our brains find faces in clouds. It was structured, mathematical, deliberate, and it was counting down. The transmission consisted of pulses, sharp bursts of radio energy occurring in sequences that corresponded to prime numbers. 2 pulses, 3 pulses, 5, 7, 11. Primes are the universal language, the first thing any sufficiently advanced intelligence would use to announce itself, because primes are purely mathematical, transcending language, biology, chemistry. They exist as fundamental truths in any universe governed by the same physics as ours. But after cycling through the first 30 prime numbers, the signal changed. It began transmitting intervals, gaps of time, and those gaps formed a countdown sequence that, when analyzed, pointed to a specific moment, 72 days from the moment we first decoded it. Now, I know what you're thinking. Countdown to what? That's what we asked. That's what every simulation, every predictive model, every scenario analysis attempted to answer. Some believed it was a gravitational event, that 3I Atlas itself might undergo some transformation, perhaps a violent outgassing or fragmentation that could send debris hurtling toward Earth. Others theorized it was a warning, a cosmic alarm clock set by an intelligence that had passed through our system long before humans even existed, waiting for the right moment to activate. But the more we studied the signal, the more we realized something profoundly unsettling. It wasn't a message for humanity. It was a message about humanity. Embedded within the signal were additional data layers, fractal-like information patterns that only became visible when we applied quantum decryption algorithms originally designed for analyzing entangled particle states. What we found can only be described as a census. Biological markers, genomic frequencies. The signal contained information that corresponded to human DNA base pair ratios, the average resonance frequency of human brain activity, and even isotopic signatures consistent with Earth's atmosphere and biosphere. Whoever sent this signal knew we were here. They knew what we were, and they were counting down to something connected specifically to us. Then the signal stopped. 12 days ago, 3I Atlas went silent. The object continued its trajectory, moving outward past Jupiter, but the transmission ceased as suddenly as it had begun. Observatories around the world confirmed it. Radio silence. In that silence, something else happened. Reports began surfacing from amateur astronomers, pilots, satellite operators, individuals scattered across every continent. They described a phenomenon that had no official designation, no scientific classification, flashes of light in the upper atmosphere appearing in sequences, patterns, pulses that matched in duration and interval, the countdown signal we decoded from 3I Atlas. The object had stopped transmitting, but something else had started responding. I don't sleep well anymore. I find myself standing outside at night, staring up at stars I've studied my entire life, wondering if they're staring back. In physics, we operate on principles: causality, observation, reproducibility. But what we're witnessing defies those principles in ways that force us to question the very foundation of what we think we know about intelligence, consciousness, and the structure of reality itself. Because if 3I Atlas was sent by an extraterrestrial civilization, then we're forced to confront a question humanity has avoided for centuries. Why now? Our planet is 4.5 billion years old. Life has existed here for nearly 4 billion years. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, have walked this earth for roughly 300,000 years. We've had radio technology for barely a century, the ability to detect interstellar objects for a few decades. The probability that an alien probe would enter our solar system precisely during the narrow window when humanity possesses the technology to detect it and the cognitive framework to understand it is astronomically small, unless it was deliberately timed, unless something about our current evolutionary moment triggered its arrival or its awakening. Let me take you deeper into what we discovered. The countdown wasn't just numerical. It was layered with additional information that, when cross-referenced with astronomical databases, pointed to specific coordinates in space, a region approximately 600 light-years from Earth, located within the constellation Cygnus. This region isn't random. It's home to a star system that Kepler Space Telescope data identified as containing multiple exoplanets in the habitable zone, worlds where liquid water could exist, worlds where life, as we understand it, might have taken root billions of years before it did on Earth. If an intelligence emerged there, and if that intelligence developed technology even a few thousand years ahead of ours, they would possess capabilities we can barely conceptualize. Faster than light communication, self-replicating autonomous probes, the ability to monitor entire regions of the galaxy, watching for the emergence of new technological civilizations like gardeners tending a cosmic nursery. The signal from 3I Atlas could be one component of a much larger network, a galactic positioning system designed to track and catalog intelligent species as they reach critical developmental thresholds. And if that's true, then the countdown wasn't a warning. It was a notification. A message sent back to its creators, informing them that another species has become aware, that humanity has graduated from isolated planetary infancy into the broader community of sentient beings capable of detecting, decoding, and potentially responding to messages written in the language of the cosmos. But here's what keeps me awake at night. what haunts every conversation I've had with colleagues who've seen the same data. If this is a notification, if 3i Atlas was designed to alert someone that we've reached a particular level of awareness, then what happens next? In evolutionary biology, there's a concept called the Great Filter. It's a proposed explanation for the Fermi paradox, the question of why, in a universe that should be teeming with intelligent life, we seem to be so profoundly alone. The Great Filter hypothesis suggests there exists some barrier, some critical challenge that most civilizations fail to overcome. It could exist in our past, some incredibly improbable step in the emergence of life or intelligence that we've already surpassed. Or it could lie ahead of us, waiting like a cosmic examination that most species fail. War, environmental collapse, technological self-destruction, or something worse, something we haven't imagined yet. What if 3i Atlas is the notification that we've reached the filter? Consider this. Every technological civilization eventually faces a moment when its power to manipulate matter, energy, and information outpaces its wisdom to use that power responsibly. We're living in that moment right now. We've built artificial intelligence systems that can generate text, images, and decisions faster than we can evaluate their implications. We've engineered biological organisms with CRISPR technology, rewriting the genetic code of life itself. We've created nuclear arsenals capable of rendering our planet uninhabitable within hours. And we're beginning to venture beyond our world, sending probes to other planets, dreaming of colonizing Mars, reaching for the stars. From the perspective of a sufficiently advanced civilization monitoring our development, this moment would be critical. The moment when a species either learns to transcend its violent, competitive, evolutionary programming or destroys itself. The moment when intelligence either becomes sustainable, cooperative, and capable of joining the galactic community, or flames out in a brief explosion of technological hubris. And if 3i Atlas was designed to detect that moment, to signal when a species reaches this threshold, then the countdown could represent something terrifying, a quarantine period. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine you're part of an ancient galactic civilization that has existed for millions of years. You've watched thousands of intelligent species emerge on distant worlds. You've seen them develop language, culture, mathematics, technology, and you've witnessed most of them destroy themselves within centuries of achieving industrial advancement. You understand that this is the nature of evolution. Natural selection breeds competition, aggression, tribalism. These traits help species survive in hostile environments, but they become lethal when combined with advanced technology. So you develop a protocol, a system for monitoring emerging civilizations, giving them time to prove they can overcome their destructive tendencies, a probationary period, a countdown. The implications are staggering. If we're being observed, if our development is being monitored and evaluated, then the next few decades will determine whether humanity is permitted to join whatever exists beyond the filter, or whether we're left to our own devices, isolated and forgotten in our corner of the galaxy. But there's another possibility, one even more disturbing. What if the countdown isn't measuring our potential? What if it's measuring our threat level? What if 3i Atlas was sent to determine whether humanity poses a danger to the broader galactic ecosystem, and the signal was a warning to its creators that we've become advanced enough to potentially spread beyond our planet, carrying our violence and chaos into the cosmos? In that scenario, the countdown isn't to first contact, it's to quarantine enforcement. I've spent hours analyzing the atmospheric phenomena that began appearing after 3i Atlas went silent. The flashes of light, the coordinated pulses visible from multiple locations simultaneously. Some appear in remote areas, oceans, deserts. Others occur directly above major population centers: Tokyo, London, São Paulo, New York. They're visible for only seconds, leaving no physical trace, no radiation signature, nothing that conventional sensors can analyze after the fact. But people see them, record them, and when we aggregate the timestamps and locations, a pattern emerges. The flashes are occurring along specific geodetic lines, mathematical curves across Earth's surface that don't correspond to political borders or natural geographic features. They correspond to magnetic field lines, Earth's magnetosphere. Our planet is surrounded by an invisible shield generated by the motion of molten iron in its core. This magnetic field protects us from solar radiation, cosmic rays, the harsh environment of space that would otherwise strip away our atmosphere and sterilize the surface. It's essential to life, but it's also something else. It's a signature, a planetary identifier visible from space, a distinctive pattern that marks Earth as a geologically active, potentially life-bearing world. And something is probing it, measuring it, mapping it with pulses of energy we can barely detect. Why? Every attempt to answer that question leads to more questions, deeper mysteries, frameworks of understanding that dissolve the moment you examine them too closely. But there's one hypothesis that keeps emerging in classified discussions, one scenario that fits the data better than anything else. We're being prepared. The countdown from 3I Atlas, the atmospheric probes, the synchronized signals, they're not hostile acts. They're not warnings or threats. They're tests, calibrations. An advanced intelligence, possibly millions of years ahead of us, is conducting an assessment of our planet, our biosphere, our technological infrastructure, preparing for something that requires precise knowledge of our world's properties, preparing for arrival. 72 days, that was the countdown. We're now at day 67. 5 days have passed since I began investigating this phenomenon in earnest. And in those 5 days, the global scientific community has fractured into camps. Some believe we should respond, attempt to send our own signal back toward the coordinates in Cygnus, announcing our presence and our intention to communicate peacefully. Others argue for silence, for caution, reminding us that we have no idea what we're dealing with or what our response might trigger. And a third group, smaller but growing, believes it doesn't matter what we do. They believe the decision has already been made, that whatever is coming was set in motion long before we detected 3I Atlas, possibly before human civilization even existed. I find myself sympathizing with the third group. There's a concept in cosmology called the anthropic principle. It states that the universe must be compatible with the conscious life that observes it, because if it weren't, we wouldn't be here to notice. It's a tautology, but it points to something profound. The fact that we exist, that we're capable of asking questions about our existence, means the universe has properties that allow for observers like us. But what if that principle extends further? What if the universe doesn't just allow for observers, it requires them? What if consciousness, intelligence, the ability to measure and understand reality is not a random accident, but a fundamental feature woven into the fabric of space-time itself? If that's true, then the emergence of intelligence isn't rare. It's inevitable. And if it's inevitable, then the galaxy is filled with minds, some older and more developed than others, all part of a vast network of awareness that spans stars and epochs. In that universe, humanity isn't an isolated miracle. We're a predictable phenomenon, one that has occurred countless times before and will occur countless times again. And just like any predictable phenomenon, we can be monitored, studied, managed. That's what 3I Atlas represents. Not first contact, but first acknowledgement. The moment when we became visible to something that has been watching all along. I think about my grandchildren. They're young, still forming their understanding of the world, learning about science and history and the nature of reality from books and teachers who operate on the assumption that tomorrow will be fundamentally similar to today. But I wonder if that assumption is about to be shattered. If their generation will grow up in a world where humanity knows with absolute certainty that we're not alone, that we never were, that every star in the night sky might host worlds with their own stories, their own struggles, their own countdowns. Would that knowledge unite us? Would it force humanity to set aside the petty conflicts and tribal divisions that have defined our history, recognizing that we're part of something incomprehensibly larger, or would it break us? History offers few encouraging examples. Every time a technologically advanced civilization encountered a less developed one on Earth, the results were catastrophic for the latter. Colonization, exploitation, cultural annihilation. The indigenous peoples of the Americas, Australia, Africa encountered European powers with superior weapons and organizational structures, and they were systematically destroyed, their lands taken, their populations decimated. The dynamics of first contact when there's a power imbalance are almost always predatory. And if we're on the receiving end this time, if we're the less advanced civilization encountering something vastly superior, then our history suggests we should be terrified. But there's another possibility, one that challenges our assumptions about intelligence itself. What if consciousness, when it reaches a certain level of development, transcends the competitive predatory instincts that evolution embeds in biological organisms? What if sufficiently advanced intelligence recognizes that cooperation, preservation, and harmony are not just ethical choices, but practical necessities for long-term survival? A civilization capable of crossing interstellar distances, of building probes that function for millennia, of monitoring entire regions of the galaxy would require social structures and decision-making frameworks that are fundamentally different from ours. They would have solved the problems that we're still struggling with: war, scarcity, existential risk, and maybe, just maybe, they've developed a framework for integrating new species into the galactic community, a protocol that's based not on domination but on guidance. That's what I choose to believe, not because the evidence supports it. The evidence is ambiguous, incomplete, maddeningly unclear, but because the alternative is too dark to contemplate. Because I want to believe that intelligence, when given enough time and experience, evolves toward compassion. That consciousness, in its highest form, recognizes the fundamental unity of all sentient beings, regardless of what planet they evolved on or what form their bodies take. 5 days remain in the countdown, maybe less. The reports continue to come in from around the world. More lights, more patterns, and now something new. Individuals seemingly unconnected, separated by thousands of miles and different cultures, are describing dreams. Vivid, recurring dreams of a presence, not threatening, but undeniable. A sense of being observed, evaluated, understood in ways that feel more intimate than any human connection. Some describe it as peaceful. Others find it deeply unsettling. But they all report the same core experience: the feeling that something is waiting. Follow this channel as we continue decoding the universe's final warnings, as we track what happens when the countdown reaches zero, as we confront the question that may define our species for generations to come. Because whatever happens next, whether it's transformation or revelation or something we have no words for yet, it will be the most important moment in human history. And we'll face it together. But I need to know something. I need you to tell me, do you feel it too? That sense of anticipation, of something immense approaching, of history accelerating toward a point of no return? Or am I just a physicist who stared into the data too long, finding patterns that exist only in my desperate hope that we're not alone, that we matter, that our brief flicker of consciousness in an indifferent universe has been noticed by something larger than ourselves? Comment below. Share your thoughts. Tell me what you see when you look up at the night sky now. Because I think, whether we're ready or not, the universe is about to answer back.